world history, I am going to tell you all about the Russian Revolution today. So, if you look at this year, you will see that this is in the middle of World War One, as if we didn't have enough to talk about, right? We're going to throw another revolution in the middle of war at you. So, hang on to your hats. Might get a little confusing, but you can always pause me when you're at home and go back over this if you need to. Okay, so let's start off by talking a little bit about the morale of the Russians. So morale just means like your spirit, your general sense of how you're feeling. How are things going for Russia in World War One? Remember we talked about this? Remember we talked about the disastrous defeat at Tannenberg where like 92,000 of them were taken prisoner? Let's just say it's not going well, okay? It's going pretty badly. And not to mention it's going badly on the battlefield. There's food shortages because all the food is going to the soldiers. They don't have enough adequate weapons. Their railroads are not very well connected, so there's not enough transportation to get food and people around. It's just a mess. You guys know that people in Russia have been frustrated with their czars for a long time. That's nothing new, right? We already talked about Bloody Sunday in 1905 as the moment when the workers tried to rise up and make their voices known to Nicholas II. And at that point, he was able to shut them down. Okay, things are going to be different this time around. It's 12 years later. They're in the middle of a war. People want to get out of the war, and they're really, really frustrated. So here's where we see the second sort of bloody Sunday. This is the second time the Russian people have tried to kind of rise up here and make their voices known to Tsar Nicholas II and say, hey, we want more rights. Here they're demanding to get out of World War One. And Tsar Nicholas doesn't want to do it. And I think part of this goes back to the whole what is World War One about question that we're trying to answer. And a lot of it is alliances, a lot of it is trying to save face. Tsar Nicholas II doesn't want to go back on his promises to his allies of France and Russia and England, and he doesn't want to look weak, so he won't do it. So he orders his troops, just like he did in 1905. He says, troops, go put down the protesters. Notice here, though, the troops are like, yeah, actually, we kind of agree with them, so we're going to join them. So this is when Nicholas is like, oh boy, I'm in trouble. He realizes that he is completely outnumbered. Even his own guards are turning against him, and he, trying to save himself and his family, steps down. So he steps down, and what happens is we have this brief period of confusion, and it's in the middle of a war, by the way, where the power is going to be transferred now to something called the provisional government. Provisional means temporary, was never supposed to be permanent, but it was just, okay, we have to hurry up and put a government together and move forward because, like, we're in the middle of a world war. It's not really a good time for us to take a long time and try to figure out what to do. So the provisional government is going to be the temporary government in charge. But dun dun dun, here's this guy. This is Vladimir Lenin. Okay, let me tell you a little bit about Vladimir Lenin. For him, it's personal. He was really upset with the Tsar because the Tsar had actually killed his brother. And, to be fair, his brother had plotted to kill the Tsar, so the Tsar found out about it. And so Nicholas II kills Lenin's brother. So Lenin has this personal vendetta against Tsar Nicholas II. And he had already been stirring up trouble for years, for like, over a decade. So much so that Nicholas II actually orders him kicked out of Russia. And so he goes to Germany and he's hiding in Germany during World War One. He's continuing to write. He's continuing to stir up trouble. He's continuing to say Tsar Nicholas is no good. So what Germany does here is kind of a brilliant, but also kind of a dirty move. And they send Lenin back to Russia in a special sealed secret train. Why would they do that? Okay, why do you think they'd do that in the middle of World War One, considering what we know about Germany and Russia? He's their secret weapon, guys, because they're like, oh, this guy's going to cause problems. So if we send him there, he's going to stir up trouble. Germany wants Russia out of the war. Russia's a huge problem, for Germany. They've got this two-front war. They don't want it. So if Germany can get Russia out of the war, it's going to be like golden. It's going to be a huge positive thing for Germany. So Lenin's slogan was peace, land, and bread. Now in 1917, what Russian's going to argue with that? Peace? Yeah, I've been telling my czar we want peace. Land? I don't really have much of that. Bread? Yeah, I don't have any of that. So sure, I'll follow this guy. So Lenin is going to promise a lot of things. What have we seen in world history when people tend to promise the moon and everything and just follow me, right? It doesn't always work out the way that you think it's going to work out. So Think about that, file that away while we move on. So Lenin comes back. He leads this group called the Bolsheviks. They are on your study guide. The Bolsheviks are essentially the communist followers of Vladimir Lenin. Lenin believes in Marx. Lenin believes in all the things that Marx believes in. Lenin wants to make his country the first communist country in world history. And you know what? He's going to do it. This is exactly what happens. Can you see why? Can you see why communism would appeal to the Russian people? We're talking about centuries of not having any rights, not really being able to own your own property. Um, it sounds great. Remember, communism sounds great if you don't have anything. You're more willing to say, well, I'll overlook the giving up of my personal rights and freedoms because I would rather have things. Well, it's not going to always work out the way it's planned. Here's how it goes down. November 1917, the Bolsheviks stage a coup d'etat. You guys remember what that is, right? That's when it's a quick seizure of power in the city of Petrograd, where we had just had that revolution. They overthrow the provisional government. So now there's essentially no government, okay? And the Bolsheviks just come in to the assembly, essentially their Congress, and just announce that they can all go home now. They are no longer needed. They dissolve the assembly. This, I put, a sign of what's to come in this brand new country, okay? Lenin wanted to end Russia's involvement in World War I. He promised that. That was like his main campaign point, so to speak. And he does it. He delivers on his promise. He pulls Russia out of World War I early. Okay, right off the bat, guys, think about this. Germany wants Russia out of the war. They send Lenin back. Lenin pulls Russia out of the war. If you're France or England or any of the Allied powers at this point, you're already mad at this brand new country of the Soviet Union. You're already like, what? What do you mean you're leaving? Don't leave now. We need you now more than ever. So the rest of the Allies are really frustrated with this new move. And some Russians even are frustrated. So now we have a civil war in the middle of the Russian Revolution, in the middle of World War I. Russia is divided. They're trying to decide, do we really want to do this? Is this for real? Are we going to be communist? Are we going to follow this Lenin guy? Or are we going to do what the Allied powers and maybe follow our czar, put him back in power? So you've got the Reds, which are going to be the communists, fighting the whites. So Russia is now fighting a civil war in the middle of the revolution. Ooh, stick with me, people. Okay. What ends up happening here is that there's going to be a multinational army. Some Americans, actually, definitely some French, some British, are going to be sent to Russia. They're going to be pulled off the Western Front and sent to Russia to try to help the whites. Why would they do that? Because they want Russia back in the war. If they can get this Lenin guy out of the picture, they're going to get Russia back in the war and they're going to win. But Leon Trotsky, right here, is the leader of the Red Army. He's tremendously popular. Lenin, people think he's going to save them. They love what he's saying. And ultimately, the Reds are going to be too powerful, and they defeat the whites. And Russia officially pulls out of the war. This is also why it's so important that the United States enters the war at the moment that it does. This is all happening right when the United States is getting into the war. So you can see why the Allies are really going to need U.S. help. They're losing a huge ally on their Eastern Front. So from this point on, we're not going to talk about Russia anymore. Because you know what? Russia, as we know it, does not exist anymore. There's going to be something called the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics. And it's going to be a lot of countries. I can't remember. I should know that. How many countries are in there? I feel like it's 15. Russia's the biggest one, but it also includes places like Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Georgia, Azerbaijan, Turkmenistan, all these countries we have today that didn't exist between these years because they were all in this big old thing called the Soviet Union. You'll also hear it called the USSR, okay? So they're definitely making people upset. And who are they making upset? They're making the Allies upset. They're making the United States upset. And so we're already seeing from the first day this country exists, they're making enemies, okay? Now, what do? Well, like I said, the Red Army wins. Leon Trotsky's able to pull off the victory, mostly because the whites were not unified. But the people, you guys, in every civil war we study, whether it's the United States Civil War, whether later on we're looking at the Congo, we're talking about Rwanda, we talk about France in 1790s, it's the people who tend to get hit the hardest. And so we see here a lot of peasants starve during this 3-year civil war. And they're like, wait, I thought it was peace, land, bread. We got the peace. How about the bread? It's a problem. The Bolsheviks are not going to be these wonderful unicorn rainbow sunshine people that everybody, I think, expected. anyone who's suspected of being a Bolshevik will be slaughtered by the White Army, and it's going to go both ways. Anybody who's suspected of being a white will be slaughtered by the Bolsheviks. It's a tremendously violent period. And then it, of course, really ends here. And we'll talk about this a little bit more later, where Lenin realizes as long as the Tsar's alive, he's a threat. So he can't let the Tsar live. So in July 1918, he murders the Tsar and his entire family at point blank range. And we'll check out a little video on this. The movie Anastasia is kind of about that because for a long time, there was the theory that, oh my gosh, Anastasia, one of his daughters, they could never find her remains. So maybe she survived. Well, her remains were finally found with DNA evidence, I believe in 2007. So now we know there's no Anastasia got away. She did manage to crawl away a little bit, and they found her in a field nearby, which is pretty horribly, awfully depressing, but she was also murdered. And then Lenin sets up his secret police. You guys, communism, this is the thing. It only works if you act the same and think the same and don't challenge the system. And there's really never been a communist country that hasn't set up some kind of a secret police force. Lenin's is called the Cheka. So that's going to be his new secret police force. The other thing that most communist countries will do right out of the gate is take away freedom of religion. Because you know why? Because freedom makes you think something different than what your leader might say. Religion makes you believe in something that might be different than someone else. And again, communism only works if you are the same and if you think the same and do as you're told. So this is some foreshadowing of what's to come. So I want you guys to think about this. So what did the Russian Revolution change? Well, okay, it got him out of the war, right? He made do on that promise. He said, I'll end the war. What things did not change in the new Soviet Union? And think about how can we make some parallels to other periods in history? Where have we heard this story before? Where are we going to hear this story? Where someone says, I will solve all your problems. Just trust me. Follow me. I'll take care of you. And we have high hopes and we think they're going to solve the problems. And then they don't. We've seen this before with Maximilian Robespierre. We're going to see this with Benito Mussolini and Adolf Hitler. It's unfortunately, we're going to see this with Ayatollah Khomeini in 1979 in Iran. This is something that is, goes back to that quote that's attributed to Mark Twain. History doesn't repeat itself, but it sure does rhyme. So thanks for listening. I'll see you later.